Have you ever experienced something you can't quite explain? Maybe you left an object in one place only to later find it somewhere else. Maybe you saw something in your peripheral view that shouldn't have been there. Or maybe you heard unexplainable noises while home alone. You might be tempted to classify these undefinable events as supernatural experiences. In the history of the Catholic Church, there's an entire section of occurrences that are officially considered supernatural appearances. Marian apparitions are a canonical part of Christian faith, mostly regarded as external manifestations, where Mary, mother of Jesus, physically presents herself to the so-called seers. In most cases, Mary appears to share some sort of message, like was the case in 1917 in Fatima, Portugal, where 3 cousins witnessed the appearance of the Virgin Mary 6 times in a span of 5 months. Throughout history, there are numerous examples of Marian apparitions from all over the world. Each is individual and different, but what connects them is this veil of mystery and wonder regarding their legitimacy, even when approved by the Church. You're watching The Dig, and this is the history of one of the Catholic Church's most controversial beliefs, Marian apparitions. Before we go back in time, we first need to set some ground rules on what is and isn't considered a Marian apparition. Although they're sometimes described as visions, apparitions need to be actual physical manifestations of the Virgin Mary. In other words, she must be visually located in the seer's environment. Visions, on the other hand, are defined as internal and spiritual experiences, visible only through the mind's eye of the person experiencing it. If someone claims to have only heard the voice of the Virgin Mary, they didn't witness an actual Marian apparition. The same can be said about Mary appearing in someone's dream, as well as alleged miracles associated with Marian artwork, like weeping statues. The earliest claimed Marian apparition in Christian tradition dates back to 40 AD. According to sacred texts, Apostle James the Greater was preaching in Hispania when Mary appeared to him and urged him to continue his mission. Although we don't have the exact dates, it's estimated that Mary died sometime between 40 and 50 AD. So at the time of her alleged apparition to James the Greater, she was likely alive and in Jerusalem. This became the devotion known as Our Lady of the Pillar. Historical texts, on the other hand, identify Saint Gregory the Wonder Worker's 3rd century AD vision of the Virgin Mary as described by Gregory of Nyssa. Since visions aren't considered examples of Marian apparitions, the latter isn't included in the official list of apparitions by the Catholic Church. So, how exactly does the Catholic Church assess whether an event is or isn't a genuine Marian apparition? Well, although the Church believes they are possible and had happened before, there were many instances of false claims and fabrications that, to put it bluntly, ruined the overall reputation and believability of these supernatural occurrences. One of the most famous disputed cases is the one relating to Our Lady of All Nations, which included 56 alleged apparitions received by Ida Peerdeman in Amsterdam between 1945 and 1959. After years of assessment in 1974, the Dicastery for the Doctrine of the Faith, the oldest department of the Roman Curia, responsible for protecting and promoting Catholic doctrine, issued the strongest negative judgment, constant de non supernaturalitate. In other words, it was established the event wasn't supernatural. 50 years later, in 2024, the Vatican reissued the same statement. See, before 1978, there was no standardized practice of evaluation whether an apparition was real. With every new alleged apparition, the Catholic Church attempted to answer the ultimate question: is this actually supernatural? Prior to 1978, if someone claimed an apparition, The diocesan bishop usually consulted with other priests, theologians, and members of the church to conclude whether an apparition was legitimate or not. Rome wouldn't intervene, so the ultimate decision would fall on the bishop. This is the precise reason why many cases that date prior to 1978 are oftentimes inconsistent and regarded as highly questionable. With the arrival of mass media and the fast spread of information, the 20th century saw an even higher number of apparition claims that were staged or completely fabricated. In addition, religious commercialization started growing exponentially throughout the previous century. Mass pilgrimage, the emergence of religious media, especially televangelism, and the popularization of religious goods like rosaries, holy water, and audio sermons became a mass industry that progressively kept attracting more believers. This was a major reason for the 1978 formalized apparition norms issued by Pope Paul VI. Mass media and commercialization meant a local claim could become a global movement before a bishop had even investigated it. So, the changing winds of the previous century made the church question who is profiting from such claims and who is in control of the narrative, an important part of their mission. What the 1978 reform changed was that it allowed Rome to intervene in some cases. Although it was always the responsibility of a local bishop to investigate the claims first and ultimately decide whether an occurrence was supernatural, he was also allowed to ask the Vatican for help in case the claims were controversial or if the phenomenon started affecting Catholics across the globe. It was only in May of 2024 that Pope Francis issued a new reform. Nowadays, the bishop does not have authority to proclaim an alleged apparition illegitimate anymore. Instead, Rome is involved in every final decision. It's the dicastery for the doctrine of the faith that must approve a bishop's final judgment before it becomes public. The Church nowadays doesn't concern itself with whether an apparition is or isn't supernatural. Instead, its focus is directed towards the question of whether the devotion around it is quote-unquote pastorally safe and spiritually fruitful, end quote. But what classifies an apparition as legitimate? First and foremost, the seer's character and mental state are very important. If the person has moral integrity, abides the church authority, and lives a life according to Christian beliefs, their claims are more likely to be taken seriously. Secondly, if the message shared by the Virgin Mary was theologically correct and spiritually healthy, in other words, if they inspired the seer and those close to them to live a more devout Christian life, they have a better chance of being legitimized. Finally, if the alleged apparition produced more conversions, inspiration to prayer, and charitable work, the Vatican will be more inclined to proclaim the occurrence as legitimate. Now that we set the groundwork, we can go back in history to look at some of the most famous cases of these supernatural occurrences that still baffle believers and non-believers. We will focus only on apparitions that were proclaimed supernatural by the Catholic Church. Let's get to it, shall we? In the early morning hours of December 9th, 1531, Juan Diego, an Aztec who had recently converted to Christianity, saw an apparition of the Virgin Mary that requested a church be built in the site of her apparition. Because the local bishop didn't believe the story, the next time Mary appeared to Diego and his sick uncle Juan Bernardino, she imprinted an image of herself on Diego's cloak, aka his tilma. Although Our Lady of Guadalupe is approved by the Church and is among the most popular pilgrimage sites among Christians, the Church remains careful around the question of Diego's cloak. In fact, it doesn't require Catholics to accept every miraculous or scientific claim made about the tilma itself. Instead, it accepts Our Lady of Guadalupe as an authentic and important Marian devotion, but it lets the believers choose what to believe in when it comes to the tilma. See, the story around the tilma has been debated since it became public. Similarly to the mystery of the Shroud of Turin, believed to be the piece of cloth that Jesus' body was wrapped into following his crucifixion, Juan Diego's tilma has been deeply scrutinized by historians, scientists, and theologians. One of the main concerns seems to be the fact that historical documentation appears late. In other words, the first historical documents about the event date to the mid-17th century, and not 1531. Many historians use this fact to pose the following question: if an image miraculously appeared and caused mass conversions, why is the earliest documentation comparatively sparse? Diego's tilma and the Shroud of Turin share two of the same theories about their origin and potential survival throughout the centuries. Art historians claim that both are a product of talented artists, due to the intricacies in the depiction of Mary and Jesus, respectively. Many believe it was Marcos Sipas de Aquino that painted the Virgin Mary on Diego's tilma. Another big question that arises is, how did the tilma survive for almost 5 centuries? According to scientists, the cloak was made from cactus fibers that usually decay within 20 to 30 years. That has long been disputed, however, and it's widely believed the cloth has been, at least to an extent, preserved through restoration and touch-ups throughout the time. Why many believe it's the actual depiction of Mary is her eyes. In fact, her eye reflections are the most controversial aspect of the entire cloak. Skeptics argue that the quote-unquote figures in her eyes are extremely tiny, even microscopic. They supposedly reflect the moment Juan Diego opened the tilma, only to be greeted by the depiction of the Virgin Mary. With all that being said, we'll leave you to decide whether you believe the story behind the cloak. Considered as one of the most influential Marian devotions in the modern Catholic world, Our Lady of Lourdes remains among the best-known cases of Marian apparitions in history. Between February 11th and July 16th, 1858, the Virgin Mary appeared 18 times to Bernadette Soubirous, the 14-year-old girl from Lourdes, France. According to Soubirous, Mary wore a white veil and a blue girdle, a belt without a buckle, usually a cord or a rope, paired with a golden rose on each foot and a rosary of pearls. The Virgin Mary allegedly identified herself by saying, quote, "I am the Immaculate Conception," end quote. This was significant as the doctrine of the Immaculate Conception had only been formally declared by the Church in 1854, 4 years prior to the apparitions. Considering Soubirous was poor and uneducated, the Church and believers saw her use of that theological phrase as proof the event actually happened. The Catholic Church legitimized the occurrence in 1862. Like Juan Diego's tilma, that's become a source of friction and mystery regarding Our Lady of Guadalupe, the supposed healing properties of the Lourdes water remain a point of contention between the Church and many Christians. See, the Church doesn't teach or believe that the Lourdes water has magical properties. In fact, lab testing concluded the water to be ordinary natural spring water, without any anomalies, and the Church openly acknowledges this. Instead, the Catholic Church attributes the so-called water miracles to God, connected through the power of prayer and faith, and not the water itself. For many believers, however, the water has magical powers, despite the Church's position. The last and arguably most famous case of Marian apparitions we'll focus on in this video is the case of Our Lady of Fatima. 3 cousins, Lucia dos Santos, Francisco, and Jacinta Marto, reportedly witnessed the appearance of the Virgin Mary 6 times in a span of 5 months, between mid-May and mid-October of 1917. According to the 3, Mary appeared to call for repentance and prayer, to warn about the dangers of war, and to reveal the so-called 3 secrets of Fatima, by far the most notorious and disputed segments of the Fatima appearances. See, the events of Fatima weren't well known outside of Portugal and Spain until the late 1930s, when Sister Lucia started writing a series of 6 memoirs in which she shared information that was previously unknown. Although the Church officially approved the appearances as legitimate in 1930, it wasn't until the 1970s that the case of Fatima began gaining notoriety, following the publication of the first 4 memoirs under the title Fatima in Lucia's Own Words in 1976. It's in her 3rd memoir that she described the 3 secrets for the first time. The first secret was a vision of hell that the children experienced on July 4th, 1917. According to Sister Lucia, quote, "Mary opened her hands once more, as she had done the 2 previous months. The rays of light appeared to penetrate the earth, and we saw, as it were, a vast sea of fire. Plunged in this fire, we saw the demons and the souls of the damned." End quote. The second secret referred to Mary's message that World War I would soon end, and a warning that unless Russia became consecrated to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, an even worse war could take place during the pontificate of Pope Pius XI, aka World War II. Because the memoir was written in 1941, there's ample skepticism about the secret's validity. Finally, the most notorious of all, the third secret revealed that a number of religious figures, including the Pope, would die a violent death. If you've already seen our video on the mysterious death of Pope John Paul I, you'll know that many believe the third secret spoke of the so-called September Pope. Because of how controversial the contents of the third secret were, the Catholic Church kept it undisclosed until June of 2000. Another strong point of contention is the so-called miracle of the sun. For her last appearance, the Virgin Mary allegedly made the sun dance. On October 13th, up to 100,000 people gathered at the Copa de Iria, where they witnessed the sun zigzag in the sky, had their clothes miraculously dried following the rain, and saw radiant colors coming from the sun. Many also saw nothing. The event was declared of supernatural character by the Catholic Church in 1930. Some believers and non-believers, however, consider the quote-unquote miracle to have simply been a case of an atmospheric optical phenomena due to clouds breaking after rain, mist and moisture in the atmosphere that can cause halos, shimmering, and apparent motion around bright objects. Whether you personally believe that Marian apparitions are real or not, it's no doubt that these mysterious occurrences remain among the most notorious examples of a very divisive segment of Christian belief. Although the Catholic Church became far stricter in legitimizing cases of Marian apparitions throughout history, there's still a lot of alleged appearances that continue negatively impacting the Church's teachings and doctrine. Regardless of the Church's stance on these alleged events, it's almost certain they will continue generating interest and discussion among both believers and non-believers. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more niche and uncharted history topics that are yet to be covered. Until next time, diggers.